Time for another Out and About with Jamie Grout Shortcast. It's a shorter version of the podcast that we just recorded with my interview guest here, Steve Knight, who, let's shake hands, man. This is a great guy. Bought me lunch once at Made Right and bought me hot chocolate today. This guy, I'll tell you, he's great. And not only that, but he heads up the fundraising and the organization for the Christmas lights you see on the Jasper County Courthouse. And Steve, I started out the podcast talking about how I think when we were both kids, we can remember seeing the courthouse all festooned with the different lights and the decorations, and it was something you came to expect. And then later on, I think it was, I can't remember whether it was in the 80s or 90s, the Board of Supervisors has decided it was too expensive to fund that, and they did these other lights that kind of framed around the courthouse, but a lot of people were disappointed, and your dad is responsible for bringing those back.
Well, he had retired in the mid-'80s, and of course he remembered the old display, the old traditional display, and he got an idea. He said, hey, let's see if we can find those lights. Found them down the street in an old lumber yard that's not there now, and then he got some of his electrician friends together, and they started looking at those lights to see if whether or not they could be refurbished, and then he went into the process of trying to get the okay from the supervisors at that time to put the traditional lighting back. And I know he went around and received almost 5,000 signatures on a petition to get those lights back. He presented that to the supervisors, but then there was one other thing that had to be done, and they had to hire an engineer to figure out how to anchor those lights in the courthouse, because that was why they went to the rope lighting, because of the limestone was being compromised by the hookups for the lights.
I see.
So they figured that out, and but it took five years.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in the
from
podcast.
87 to 92, and that included some fundraising to make sure they had the funds to pay the electrician company at that time to put them up. And so, it's since 92, they've been up every year.
Now, you said that during the podcast that the courthouse lighting actually goes back to the 30s.
Goes back to 1934, which is kind of unique because we're at 2024, so 90 years.
Wow.
But there was two times during World War II, I think 3 years, they weren't lit, they weren't put on, and then the energy crisis of 1973. And other than that, they've been going up every year since 92. The old traditional style.
Wow, it's quite a deal, folks. And if you have not seen the courthouse lit up, we talk about people flying over. You get letters from people?
Yes, I've got letters, postcards. I like to hear those stories, and I go. Normally, I do some sing along Christmas singing in town. And there's a few organizations that will give me a check for the lights and that kind of thing, and I always appreciate that. But you bet.
Yeah, it's quite a deal, and it started out as Steve said, very, I guess you could call it meager in terms of lights, but then it grew throughout the years, and that was mostly in the 50s and 60s, wasn't it?
Yes, 50s and 60s. Of course, the Commerce was around the square, and the Chamber of Commerce, hats off to them for a great night Friday night, too. But there was a Christmas parade like we had Friday night. And, of course, there was the lighting ceremony where we had the big countdown and flip the switch. And so, yes, but it was very elaborately decorated in the 50s and 60s with real garland, real pine, and then Christmas trees on the corners and lots and lots of pretty much the same display, but not as much as it was back then. But
okay, we have about a minute left or so, Steve. If people want to contribute to the courthouse lighting in the future, how can they go about doing that?
They can do that by sending their check to Jasper County Auditor, Box 944, Newton, Iowa 50208. Or they can give me a call, and I'll come and and get their donation, or see that it gets to the courthouse. And And my number is 641-521-6419.
Okay, so contribute to the courthouse lighting. And if you haven't seen the courthouse lit up in Jasper County, check it out. And also, too, as long as we're talking about Christmas lights, don't forget the holiday lights out at Maytag Park.
Oh, yes, that is a beautiful, wonderful display, and it gets bigger every year.
Yes.
And so, and then, of course, then we have the Jasper County Museum.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The 200 trees decorated for Christmas.
Yes.
And I haven't been there, and I can't wait to get there.
I did a live stream on Sunday afternoon from there for about an hour. It's the Tremendous Christmas Experience, yes. And if you haven't seen that, check it out. I guess Newton is the place to be if you want to celebrate Christmas, right?
There you go. I appreciate that. You betcha.
Okay.
You bet.
My interview guest today has been the one and only Steve Knight, who heads up the group of folks that get together every year to put up those Christmas lights at the Jasper County Courthouse. Check out the Tremendous Christmas Experience at the Jasper County Historical Museum, and of course, holiday lights out at Maytag Park, with the presenting sponsor being one of my sponsors too, Clement Mackey Insurance. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate it.
Take care, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
We want to say, before we wrap up, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year if I don't see you again real soon.